Would you like a crazy statistic to kick you off on a Friday? What's that? You said no? Well, you're going to get it anyway. Because if you are a fan of WWE, AEW, NXT, and Impact, in a week when there is a pay-per-view, you have to watch 16 hours of sports entertainment. This is why we're all going nuts on social media, because deep down in our feet, we're insane to begin with. But it does mean when things are good, you're getting all the enjoyment stuck into your ear, because that's where it goes into your brain. And my name is Simon Miller, this is WhatCulture Wrestling, and I watch it all so that when you don't want to, you don't have to, and you can just stop by here instead. Right now, we're going to talk about Impact, because they did have a wrestling show on Thursday night, so let's take the finger of power and give the good bits an up, and the bad bits a down. Impact started with a memorial graphic for New Jack, who did very sadly pass away recently. And I understand that he's a controversial character, but he was also a husband, he was also a father, and he's also a friend. I thought it was a nice touch. Our first match was then Rohit Raju versus Jake something. And although I know they've fallen out because Rohit Raju and Mahabali Shera kept getting involved in his matches, I still don't really know what the motive was. They kind of just did it because it was something to do. The other problem is that everything here was just so telegraphed. Now, usually in professional wrestling, walking the obvious path is the right one, because then you get a satisfying ending. But we have an industry pandemic when it comes to finishes, and everybody is to blame. And I am, of course, talking about distractions. I don't want it to go away forever. I don't want to bury it in a hole and nobody ever sees it again. But I just think sometimes we look at a situation and go, well, we do want to have this match, but we don't really know who should win, so we'll just cause a distraction. And every single wrestler and every single referee on the planet falls for it. But yes, just as Jake something had the match won, Mahabali Shera was causing the distraction, and he held onto Jake something's foot. 1, 2, 3, Rohit Raju is your winner. And I do mean your, he belongs to you. And the match was fun, don't get me wrong, and we really leveled up Jake something afterwards, because he got Shera and smashed him through a table. He was also super duper pissed off. But why couldn't, even if you wanted Rohit to win, why can't he just win with his move? Or if you're trying to protect Jake something, why doesn't he win with his move? It is something we're able to do, but again, I think this is a business-wide issue, but I'm still going to give it a down. I do like this ongoing story, however, between Tenille Dashwood and Taylor Wilde. Taylor was being interviewed, and as she basically fell into her tag team winner Under Siege, she wasn't overly happy because she doesn't care about any of that and she wants to go after the Knockouts Championship. But then Tenille Dashwood turned up and she was like, well, look, we did win. And later on, I have a match with Kiera Hogan, and if I'm victorious there, can you believe it? You and I, we're going to be the #1 contenders for the tag team belts. And yes, look, I know the bickering tag team partners have been done time and time again, but it mostly works because Tenille Dashwood's character is such a moron in the way that it's meant to be. And yes, speaking of all of that, Rachel Ellering and Jordynne Grace did indeed lose their tag team championships at the pay-per-view, even though they only held them for around about 72 seconds. But this is also tying into a bigger narrative, because Jordynne Grace has decided this is all my fault, it's all my responsibility, her confidence is in the toilet. Rachel Ellering was trying to put a brave face on it by saying it doesn't matter, we'll get another chance, you and I, we can do it, we can rise to the top. And Jordynne was like, that is a good idea, give me a minute, I'm going to talk to Scott D'Amore. And there's more to this later. Also, given what happened here and what we did get in a few minutes, I really think, or at least I can smell, a Jordynne Grace heel turn coming here. And I actually think that would be right for the character right now. You can't keep doing the same thing all the time. Of course, Tenille Dashwood then did beat Kiera Hogan, because let's face it, we weren't going to do anything else. Up. And don't get me wrong either, that up is purely for the story, because once again, who was just causing countless distractions on the outside? It was Tasha Steelz. See, what did I just say? It also ended with the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, the surprise roll-up, and you already know my feelings on that. But all of this did get us to where we need to go, so sometimes that's a get-out-of-jail-free card. We then threw a bunch of angles into this, because not only was Tasha Steelz attacking Tenille Dashwood afterwards, but Deonna Purrazzo was out here, Kimberly was out here, Susan was out here, of course leaving Taylor Wilde to go, well, I don't appreciate this, so she came out too to make the save. Unfortunately, when you do the maths, the numbers game wasn't looked too kindly for her, and they all got beaten up. This meant that Havoc had to come out and murk everybody before Decay was there as well, and I'm going to guess that we did do this, because now we have a very nice tag team match that we could probably do on next week's Impact. all of this was fine. Remember what I just said about Jordynne Grace? Well, Impact then rewarded my nerd brain because she returned to Rachel Ellering and said, good news, mate. I've talked to Scott D'Amore and he said we've got our match. And Ellering was like, oh, that's really exciting. Who is our match against? And she went, it's you versus me. And why the hell would she do that? We also learned that New Japan's Kojima is coming to Impact next week, and I did not see that one coming. And talking to New Japan, we also had the tag team champions Finjuice, and they said they've got a match later, but they're going to win. If only they knew. Petey Williams versus VSK was next. I thought it was pretty good. It's only VSK's second match in Impact, and he's not having the best time because he lost again here, but also it's nice that Petey Williams seems to be back properly because he was coming and going, and these two had quite good chemistry. The story of this match too was basically that Petey Williams wanted to hit the Canadian Destroyer, but VSK knew he wanted none of that, so he kept using his area arsenal to try and keep Petey Williams down. Unfortunately, the one thing that VSK doesn't have, that Petey Williams does have, is experience. So he found a way, even though he tried once and failed. He hit the Canadian Destroyer and he got the win. And that was it too, and I suppose we're just bedding VSK in slowly. I hope that WWE doesn't just swoop in and pinch him, which has happened a lot before with Impact. Although saying that, unless that's what VSK wants, if VSK's biggest dream is to be signed by WWE, then I hope that it does happen, because you'd have to be mad to want anything else. Rich Swann was then being interviewed because he's back after returning at Under Siege, and he went there because he's such a big Steven Seagal fan, and now he hates Morrissey, who of course he confronted at the pay-per-view because that tall guy was beating up his best friend Willie Mack. As far as he sees it too, all Morrissey has done since arriving is basically destroyed the promotion, and he's not going to have any of that. And just as he was saying these words, obviously you were focused on Rich Swann, when from nowhere, this massive boot just came into the frame and destroyed poor Rich Swann's jaw. It was, of course, Morrissey, and he carried this on. I mean, my word, did he beat Swann up. So we are definitely building to this down the line as well, and all respect to Gia Miller, who was doing the interviewing here. She sold this like she was witnessing death. I'm all good with this feud though, because Morrissey is so damn tall and Rich Swann isn't that tall, so the visual alone looks really good. Also, Rich Swann is the kind of wrestler that can make you believe maybe he could pull out a victory over somebody like this. So sign me up, I am ready. We then just had the usual nonsense at Swingers Palace. And if you told me they just made this up as they go, well, I'd believe you. Because TJP was smashing it on the tables and winning a load of money when he saw Fala Bar in some kind of a dress, because as it turned out, he owed the casino a bunch of cash, so this is how he was paying off his debt. For some reason, TJP didn't like this though, so he used his winnings to secure Fala Bar's freedom, and then was like, oh, we used to be tag team partners, why don't we be tag team partners again? Petey Williams was then there, and he took offense to this, because of course TJP and Petey Williams lost to Under Siege. So now, next week, we are gonna get a tag team match. Petey's also gonna team with Josh Alexander, and nobody asked Josh if he was all right with this. And then Decay were there, they was just dishing out challenges as well. Honestly, too much happened here, and there was no narrative thread running through any of it. It hurt my brain down. Our new #1 contender for the Impact World Championship was out next though. I am of course talking about Moose. And like most of the time, he gets it up. He, of course, did win that 6-way at Under Siege and was coronated thanks to Steven Seagal, which means now, I suppose at Slammiversary, we are getting Kenny Omega versus Moose. And as I said last week, I need that a lot. Moose made a bunch of comparisons to Zeus and proved that's why he will win at the pay-per-view. And I have no idea what we're going to do here, because all of my innards say that Moose should win that match, but I don't believe that Moose is going to win that match. So what the hell are we gonna do? Kenny Omega and Don Callis had heard enough at this point, so they came sauntering out to the ring. And Don Callis was all like, oh, look at you, Moose, you're a physical beast. When the camera cut to Kenny Omega, who was rolling his eyes, Kenny is the best. The problem, however, though, is that it all comes down to talent, and while Moose has bucket loads, he doesn't have enough as Kenny, which means whenever they do clash, Moose is gonna lose. As proof of this, Don went on to say, Moose, how many Super Bowls did you win and how many world titles did you win down in Ring of Honor? But Moose was having none of that because he just got the microphone and said, look, I'm not Rich Swann. Your mind games aren't gonna work on me, and if you keep doing it, I'll rip off your head and shove it up your ass. And all wrestlers make that threat. One day, I want to see it followed through. Kenny then barged in, and as ever was all like, well, it only takes one-winged angel, and Moose even doubted he'd be able to get him up for the move. When Gallows and Anderson were out here, and they started skulking around the ring, you could just see a beatdown coming. Before that was going to happen though, of all the people, Sami Callihan and his baseball bat were out to the ring, and he did indeed get in there, and he protected Moose. Moose and Callihan had a little chat in the back as well, and Moose was like, I don't want your help, and Callihan was like, I'm not doing it for you. I'm trying to protect Impact Wrestling, and I suppose this is a bit like WCW versus NWO. Somebody has to be the hero for our home company, and it probably should be Sami Callihan, and it probably should be Moose. All of this works for me though. I find it so intriguing, and again, I don't know what happens post-Slammiversary or on the night, so I'm gonna sit down and enjoy it. And talking of all this intrigue, we then had Rachel Ellering versus Jordynne Grace, and it's getting it up. And again, do not forget, this has all been motivated by the fact that Jordynne Grace in her head thinks she was the weak link in her team. So now I suppose she's like, well, if I beat Rachel Ellering, that proves I wasn't the weak link, so I better go out there and beat Rachel Ellering. And she failed. It did start off pretty even though, because the other person kept countering the other person's moves, but as we went on, Rachel Ellering started to get the upper hand. That really annoyed Jordynne, so all of a sudden her shots started to get a bit stiffer, but again, she was on the back foot. Even when Grace was able to start whooping her ass, Rachel Ellering continued to kick out, and honestly, this poor lady, I thought she was going to explode. They then started trading the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment. I mean, there was a near fall here, and there was a near fall there, but nobody on this evening had a better, more devastating move than Rachel Ellering's most devastating move, because that did keep Jordynne Grace down, because her devastating move wasn't good enough. Anyway, the point is she lost. As soon as the referee had counted 3, Grace looked like she had just come second in Warzone. She was so disappointed. And although here she kept her calm and they did embrace at the end, you can just see it coming. Jordynne is gonna wreck Rachel Ellering eventually, and I'm gonna be here for it. I do have to make mention of the roll-up for all the reasons I talked about earlier. It is just being run into the ground, but once more the story saves this. But you could always have, again, Rachel Ellering win with her move. I mean, what a concept. I cannot give the same pass for Brian Myers and Matt Cardona though. Down. Because Myers was cutting a promo in the back, and despite being distracted by Decay for the last few weeks, now he was really mad at Cardona again because, yes, of course, they had gone at it to see who was going to be in the main event at Under Siege. Matt Cardona had won, and then he wasn't able to follow up on that opportunity because right now he's not the #1 contender, so Brian Myers feels slighted. Matt then just walked out of a door, so Brian Myers ran up to him and punched him in the face and threw him into the wall, so we're going back to this feud. And the strange thing is that I'm all good with this. I actually think they made it work, but why did we walk away from it just to come back to it? I'm sorry, that don't make any sense. Because if you wanted to do that, why didn't you just have Brian Myers get to the main event of Under Siege, and then you could have done a subplot there, so coming out the other end of the pay-per-view, you segue back into it. I mean, I just think that would have flowed better, but what do I know? I am just a bored asshole ranting on the internet. It was then time for our main event though, and we had a phenomenal Fabu twist with our tag team titles. Let me check my pocket, it's getting it up. Because at the pay-per-view, Madman Fulton and Ace Austin had become the #1 contenders for the tag team titles, so on this evening they were taking on Finjuice, who of course are the tag team champions. And look, yes, this was just a very standard but very enjoyable tag team match with Finjuice looking strong at the start before Madman Fulton and Ace Austin took over, but they just made this work. It was very entertaining. Juice Robinson eventually got the hot tag to Finlay and he was running wild before the tag klaxon sounded, which meant everybody was able to hit their move. And at one point, Madman and Austin seemed to be going for this like powerbomb fold combo thing, but realizing that would end them, Finjuice cut it off. There was also around about 58 near falls and they were coming at you so fast you were exhausted, but eventually Finjuice were able to hit the stunner and they were able to hit the pulp friction and they retained their tag belts. If you were like me, you looked at your watch and you thought, wait a minute, this was a very short episode of Impact, and that's because we weren't done. Because from nowhere, out came Violent from Design, who reminded us that Rhino has the Call Your Shot trophy, meaning he can call his shot whenever he wants. Now, the plan for this originally was that he and Heath Slater were going to win the tag team titles, but then Heath Slater got injured, and because of that, I forgot he even had it, and I forgot he was going to cash it in here. I mean, I didn't know that to begin with, but I was like, oh my gosh, surely that means they're going to win the tag team championships. He was teaming with Joe Doring, and honestly, these two absolutely wrecked Finjuice. I mean, there was gauze, there was this kind of slam thingamajig, and then Joe Doring hit this lariat onto Juice Robinson that almost took his head off, and he hooked the leg, he got the 1, 2, 3, and Impact went off air with Violent by Design, indeedy, being the new champs. Eric Young and co celebrated as the screen faded to black, and I thought this was a terrific ending, and it's exactly what we should be doing. Violet by Design are one of the best groups in all of professional wrestling. They have to have some gold around their waist, and now I'm pleased that they do, especially because I assume Finjuice are going back to Japan. So this was top stuff, and it left me with a smile on my face. And never forget, when you sit your ass down on the sofa and you watch something to be entertained and it leaves you smiling, well, you just gotta give it up. Now, please do leave a comment below and let me know what you thought about last night's episode of Impact. Did you like the title change, or maybe you hated it? Everybody's got an opinion. Like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Make sure you check us out over at WhatCulture.com. Make sure you come say hello on social media, and make sure you watch another video here on our YouTube channel. My name is Swann for WhatCulture. I appreciate you joining me throughout the week, and if you are around tomorrow, I'll be back to up those downs for a show known as Smackadown, aka Roman Reigns' Happy Hour.